Got my glasses on.
All right. I'm live.
Oh, he's sitting here. We're in the stage. We didn't know this. We thought that that was the stage. That makes more sense. Okay. Yeah.
Cool. All right. Um, I was thinking we start with something cool. Like, let's just get into a circle first. Yeah.
Closer?
Yeah, closer, closer. Come on.
Yeah.
It's a lecture, but you guys are my friends, and it's chill, and it's my first time, and I thanks for your support, and it's cool that you guys. I've had so much experiences with you guys in the last couple of weeks, but at the same time, haven't met each other till now, right?
Yeah.
So that's kind of really cool.
Yeah.
Senor Edgar, yeah, as long as you're there, cool. Part of it. So this is a little game that I usually play with my acting students because I'm an acting teacher as well. And these are two actors from Canada as well, so that's cool. It's just a simple way to get to know each other's names and like break down various a little bit. So I say my name and then I pass the ball over, and then you have to say my name first and yours. All right, and we keep going that way. So you have to pay attention.
Oh.
You put me on the spot.
Yeah. You gotta think. Okay, so I'm James.
James, Nico.
James, Nico, Gina.
James, Nico, Gina, Edgar.
James, Nico, Gina, Edgar, Jessica.
James, Nico,
Gina.
Gina, Edgar. There you go.
Jessica.
Jessica, Scott.
James, Nico, Gina, Edgar, Jessica, Scott, and Chelsea.
Okay, cool. Then you say your favorite animal. That's a bit tough. So James Lion.
James, Lion, Nico, Dog.
Lion, duck.
That James.
Oh,
It's a name as well. Yeah. Yeah.
James, Lion, Nico, dog, and Gina, cat.
Cool.
James, Lion, Nico,
Dog.
Doug, Gina,
Cat.
and Edgar, Shark.
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 Cool. Nice.
James, Lion, Nico, dog, Gina, cat, Edgar, shark, Jessica, koala.
Wow.
You got this, Scott.
Brain dead.
It's all good.
Scott, Al.
All right,
Best
cool.
I
That's
got.
the best.
You said Owl?
Al.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, well. James. Oh, I had it right up until
Yeah.
that. Lion,
Yeah.
Nico, dog,
Yeah.
Gina, cat, Edgar, shark,
Shark.
Jessica, koala, Scott, owl, and Chelsea, horse.
All right. So James Lion, Nico Dog, Gina Cat, Edgar Shark, Jessica. Oh my God, Otter. What? Was it?
Otter's cute too.
We talked about otter though. We talked about otters recently.
I
What,
like otters.
what was
In
it?
Australia, and they eat
Yeah.
things.
What was your animal?
Koala.
Koala. That's right. Scott, owl, and Chelsea. Horse. Okay. All right. Cool.
What's your animal?
Chelsea.
Horse.
Horse. She's
Horse.
into caballo.
Sí.
See, we say caballo.
Caballo.
Yeah. Yeah. No. Thank you guys for coming. I really appreciate it. This is something that's I've been wanting to do for a long, long time, and it's nice to be here with people that I care about and that care about me, and with whom I've had some very special experiences too. So. It's nice that I kept it small too, because yeah, it's a bit nerve wracking, but the live is going to stay afterwards too. So you guys are helping me kind of be grounded, which is nice. And if this isn't an existential crisis, I don't know what it is. Like I'm going through it right now, as well as this weekend was one hell of an existential crisis too with the mushrooms thing. So interestingly enough, it was at their restaurant.
Oh, was it?
Yeah. I took stronger mushrooms than I thought, and then I had this whole trip. And then Jessica came to help, and it turned into a ceremony. It was like a bad trip, but then it turned into a very beautiful experience. So, yeah, it's like the right time to be doing this. So, yeah. All right, guys, I'm gonna sit up here though, and Nico, I just want to give you a hug. Always nice to have a little. Thank you, brother. Okay. Make yourselves comfortable. Hey, Sarah. No problem. Have a seat. Yeah, so like one of the main reasons. Sí? Ah, Sierra. Es como la Sierra Nevada. Es como lo mismo, sí, casi lo mismo.
And your favorite
Yeah.
animal? Oh gosh, there's so many. Panda.
Panda. There you go. Cool.
For today.
Yeah.
It changes.
Yeah. Yeah. So Chelsea and Sierra are sisters from Canada as well. Yes, it's crazy. We got 4 Canadians, 5 with me. Yeah. So is there someone else coming too? No. Okay. Cool. Yeah. So when it comes to this kind of thing, lectures to begin with, it's not that popular, but even less popular to talk about something like existential crisis. And yet it's the one driving factor behind a lot of the things that happen in our lives, right? We enter these crises and we don't even think of them as crises in the sense that they're existential or were relevant to our identities, but that is exactly what they are. So in the public intellectual sphere, there's a lot of interest in the meaning crisis. There's a big meaning crisis happening in the world. So that's starting to become a popular thing to discuss, particularly because it's happening on a global scale. It's not just in one or several cultures. It seems to be something that humanity is going through. And I know that I've been going through it perpetually for so long. And everybody does go through existential crisis, when we're teenagers and that sort of thing. So when we're talking about existential crisis, we're talking about our existence. Whose existence? Ours, but also existence in general. We're questioning existence. So it's a very personal thing. And so this is why I'm going to start with a personal story, so that we can relate to these things as human beings. Because when we're talking about the nature of existence, it can get metaphysical really fast, and it has almost nothing to do with who you are as a human being and how you live your life. And yet it is the one thing that we need to know in order to live our lives. It's weird. It's just we don't think about it because it's usually been programmed in us, right, from birth. Like, here's the story of how everything was here, now go and live your life, right? And these are metaphysical assumptions that sometimes get challenged, and we'll explore why they get challenged. So I have a little bit of a unique story, as we all do, because we're individuals, but mine began because let me start with the awareness that I got, like the first time I became aware. I was about 6 months old, and my sister Jessie, we're twins, she and I were laying in bed, and I felt a tug on my ear, like pretty strong, and it was her with her right hand. And all of a sudden I became aware that I existed. 6 months old. And I corroborated the story with my mother because she had put us on that bed to take a photo. So there's also a photo of us in bed like that. And I all of a sudden realized I'm here. I feel. It wasn't so much like me personally, but that I exist. It was some level of awareness that I was around, or that existence existed. So that was the existential part. The crisis part almost happened immediately because my biological father, or who I call my sperm donor, because he wasn't so much a father in my life as a role, but he was very violent, very I don't want to say evil, but did some pretty evil stuff. So he was very with my mother, beating her up, putting guns in her face, and then threatening to kill me and my sister. So the one thing that I remember when I was probably around a year old was my mother being in my mother's arms with my sister. She was inside the bedroom and she was holding us to keep us safe while he was banging on the door trying to get in really, really loud. And I could feel the vibration of those banging, just bang, 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 and feeling very unsafe, but at the same time feeling very safe because I was cradled in my mother's arms. That was like crisis, right? Like I'm unsafe. So not only do I exist, but that existence can cease. Um, Even my mother telling me the story of him doing that was a bit traumatizing. I was maybe 6 or 7. She was explaining, well, this is who your father is, But apparently he held up some knives, and said, "You're afraid I'm going to kill your kids, aren't you?" It's just really messed up stuff. So this isn't a psychological session where I'm trying to release these things in some fashion, right? It's these are things that I've already processed, and they're beautiful things. And the one thing I want you to remember throughout this lecture is that whatever story I tell you, it is not my identity. That's not me. It's a part of who I am, sure, or a part of the past James, but it doesn't have to define who I am, although it led me to these experiences and to sitting with you today to be able to bring to you what I have like knowledge and experience insofar as what it means to have existential crisis. So how is it relevant to you? That's the question, right? Everything that I want to say, I want to make sure that it connects with you on some level. Is anybody here, like when I said that story, have a visceral reaction where they're like, "Oh, I've had something like that happen to me"? Anybody? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Um, so I don't think they're always negative. They don't have to be negative. Sometimes it's as simple as you went on a hiking trip and then you fell. You were having a lot of fun, but you realize that even fun can lead to death or to serious things, right? Um, so I don't think that the level of it's not the level of intensity or negativity isn't necessarily relevant to an existential crisis. Sometimes it's, and as we're going to discuss later, it's more subtle things that can cause an existential crisis, and we don't realize that we're in it. So that's the first part. Um, yeah. So now we have a bit of existential uh, crisis kind of background or context. But now, when it comes to why I became what some would call a philosopher, and why I'm interested in developing my abilities of public speaking to Negra, why I'm interested in talking and articulating a lot of the ideas that I've been through is because after that, being aware so early on in my life, and a lot of people don't believe me. They'll say, "Oh, 6 months, you can't have memories from 6 months old," but it can happen. Some people say they have memories from past lives. These are things that we can debate, but it's not important here. The point is, came to my awareness quite early on. I had crisis quite early on, and then crises kept on happening in different ways, like uh, being taken away from my family to escape from this violent person, growing up in communities where I was the only white kid, or the only French person, or the only English person when I went back home. So being bullied a lot, not being able to be integrated into any kind of community. This, in large part, defines my life. For example, when I was 8 to about 12, I was an altar boy in church. It's where I found order and structure. And then my mother fell in love with the priest there. And in Roman Catholicism, the priests aren't allowed to marry. So they didn't like her, and they kicked me out of being an altar boy. So that was, you know, tough. And then my uncle said, well, why don't you try military cadets? I did that. I did quite well. The order was very good for me because I had been bullied at school and I hadn't really integrated into any one community. I had been kicked out of my religion. And then here was a military thing where I had purpose, I had meaning, and I could just go and get better at being a regular human being, whatever that meant at the time. That being said, I had a car accident with them. Almost died. Very bad car accident. My ear was almost ripped off. Broke my ankle. Couldn't play sports, which I was very athletic at 15 years old. So I was very depressed, and I started drinking, hanging around with the wrong crowd. And they were very insensitive with me because I was slouching, and you're supposed to be very straight. And they said, "What's going on with you? Like, why are you slouching? Just man up or come back when you're okay." So I quit. I was too depressed. I was like, this is messed up. So all of these crises, to always be kicked out of the structures that give us order, there's something very important about that I want to explain. So that's why I'm going through these a little bit kind of quickly and roughly. But the point is, I don't want to. It's not about. It's not about dramatizing something unnecessarily. It's just to show you that I was put in a situation or a certain lifestyle that many people go through today, and more people are going through it at different times. I just got lucky insofar as that a lot of the crises and a lot of the different things that happened to me happened routinely, consistently, always deracinated, never part of any kind of community or culture or ideology or family structure, right? So in short, I can say that I was born and raised in chaos. And that's very important because it's tied to existence in different ways, but it's also tied to identity. And that's what we're going to get to in a bit. Is there any questions so far? Well, thanks. Comment is good. So you said, thank you for sharing. Well, thanks for listening. Another reason I want to talk about the personal aspect is so that people can feel a little bit more open and willing to discuss their own personal lives. For me, it has benefit, of course, has value, but the better value in expressing the things that happen to us personally is that if we can face those things, we can start to move towards orienting ourselves towards meaning, because what we suffer brings us a lot of meaning, which is something we can discuss a little bit later as well. Okay. So the lack of order. Existence, and here's where it becomes a bit more metaphysical, but existence is the domain of order. It is structure. It is rooted in pure potential. So what does that mean? We look around us and we have material objects, we have our bodies, we have all these things, right? What we consider to be existence. And when there are things that come into our lives that make us question that existence, right? Then we have no choice but to ask the biggest philosophical question there is, which is, why is there something rather than nothing? Like, why do I exist, right? Why is existence there? Hey, Erica. So I'm going to put this down and like, no, I forgot. My sister told me to speak with my heart today, and I'm starting to like be in my head. That's why I'm losing the order of this. But thanks for being present. Okay. So I've just talked about a lot of chaos in a chaotic way. That's great. Now let's talk a little bit more about the order aspect of it. But I'm going to go into my heart first. At 18 years old, after everything that I just explained to you happened, right? Risking dying in different ways, so not being able to integrate in any one community or anything like that, I started going through this infinitely regressive question, right? Which is why? Like a kid does. Why go to school? I hadn't gone to school in about a year. I quit high school when I was in 9th grade. And I'm thinking to myself, what am I going to do? I was working in a paper toilet factory, 12-hour shifts from 8 p.m. to 8 a.m. And I'm thinking to myself, like, what? I have this whole life behind me, and I have this whole life in front of me, and I have no idea what it is that I want to do, what I love, what I don't love. I'm depressed, and so I just asked myself, like, why go to school? Like, if I can get an answer, maybe like that's where we start. We start with logic. When you have no belief system, when you have no orientation, no support system. Of course, I had my mother and my sister, which I'm very grateful for. I wouldn't be here today without them. But beyond that, I had nothing. Dealing with poverty, dealing with bullying, dealing with identity crisis constantly. Um, you ask yourself why. At first, you start asking, well, why me? Like, poor little me. Why did I go through this stuff? But when you get sick of all that stuff, you think to yourself, like, why continue living? Like, for what reason? And that is synonymous with asking another question, which is, who is continuing to live? Who? So we're talking about why, but then there's the who. Like, who am I? Because if I say, like, why continue to live? Well, because you have things to do. Everything is about action. Well, what do I want to do? Who am I? Like, what do I like to do? What am I good at doing? Who am I? So you start to see that there's a bit of a link between an existential crisis and an identity crisis. The two go hand in hand. So I asked, but because I didn't know myself, I started going more the external, try to understand the external world instead of understanding the internal world, right? And so up until that point, I had been hanging out with the geeks and with the rappers and the different groups that we have in schools and stuff, and I was always adapting to them and even mimicking their idiosyncrasies. That's how much I didn't have an identity of my own. I was completely fractured. I started thinking that I was weird because I couldn't really know. I mean, it wasn't me. I was mimicking different people who had contradictory ideas and methods of living. And my sister, I remember her telling me, like, well, if you think you're weird, you're going to become weird. And so that's what happened. I became very isolated, and you know, so all of that identity crisis was something that I had put to the side. It was like, well, I'll put that to the side. I never know what I am anyway. And I was dyeing my hair, and I was trying different things and so on. So what I did instead was go logical, because when you don't believe in anything else, you can only go with logic. So I asked the question, well, why go to school? To get a job. Why get a job? To have a family. Why have a family? To serve society in some way. Society can maintain itself, sustain itself, but why? And so on and so forth. Whereas eventually you only ask yourself, like, okay, well, why is there planets around which life lives, and then why does the universe exist? And even if there's something outside of the universe, like, why does that exist? And then you realize, well, that's infinitely regressive. You can always ask why, but like, why couldn't it just have been absolutely nothing? That we're not even around to ask these questions. And that is the biggest philosophical question, but it's not the most important. The most important was what Albert Camus posed, which is, like, whether or not you should commit suicide. So if you have an answer as to why, and you understand, or you have a justification for why existence is here and why you exist in it and why you're suffering in it, then you've answered that question. I mean, there's no need to commit suicide at that point. You're here for a reason. So I wasn't going to be able to continue living my life until I had a satisfactory answer, which is, that's why existence is here, and I'm here for that reason. That's my purpose. And unfortunately, because I had never grown up with enough integration, right, with enough I don't want to say ideological, but enough integration of any kind of idea, that as soon as I went and studied any kind of religion or philosophy, or I would immediately not be able to trust those things. And I wouldn't believe those things. So I said, because their answers wouldn't make sense at some point. So, well, I have bigger questions than that. That doesn't satisfy me. And it was very extreme because when you grow up in chaos, one of the self-defense mechanisms that can happen is to try to understand the environment around you. If you understand it, then you can have power somehow, right? You harness power through knowledge. But when you're asking these questions that are super metaphysical, that don't necessarily have a logical answer because they're very paradoxical, right? Like the Big Bang, for example. The universe explodes out of nothingness. Okay, and it's expanding. It's like, well, the universe is expanding into what? What is it expanding into? And from within what? So any kind of answer, whether it's scientific, logical, or religious, has a limit, which is, well, we don't know beyond that, and we're still figuring that out. Or that's a mystery, which is in a lot of religion, which is, well, it's God's mystery. You're not meant to question that. I mean, I wish I could have accepted that at the time. Yeah, don't question it, just live your life, live in the heart. That's not what happened. I was stuck in survival mode, and I needed to have that answer. So a whole philosophy emerged after that, where I was answering these questions and getting into metaphysics, and ultimately it's called paradoxism because everything is paradoxical at base. But that's not really what I get into. Is the point is the next decade out of my life, from around 18, 19 years old to 27, I went on this quest to try to understand the nature of reality so that I could live my life. So my life, the only purpose that I had was to try to understand the nature of reality. That's all I had. If I didn't have that, there was no reason to continue living. So I was very dark. I was very depressed. I was very abusing alcohol a lot. And a lot of these things are stories that a lot of people that I've come across have resonated with. So hopefully I'm going to be finished with my own personal story soon, but to contextualize everything is important. Any questions or anything so far? No? Okay, good. So when I was 27, for the next 10 years, as I said, I was just going through life trying to make as much money as I needed, but I was drinking it away and I was thinking about these things. And that's what we call nihilism. You don't, nihilism is the lack of belief in anything. It is the lack of desire to believe in anything. And so you're floating in space without any kind of purpose or meaning. And it's very, very hard to live that way for very long periods of time. So of course, the result of that is to try to commit suicide. So I did, 27 years old, tried to step in front of a train. And the interesting thing is, when you finally face death and you realize, oh, I don't actually need to or want to do that, you start to have near life experience. That's the duality of things, right? Death brings life, or it's a rebirth. So we need to face death. It's part of things. We see that in many religions, like Christianity, right? Christ died and was reborn. So the idea of death isn't one to avoid, but it's one to face, is what I had learned at that point in time. What happened was that after that event, meaning started to happen in my life. A lot of meaning. From where, I don't know where, but I started to have a lot of different things start to happen in insofar as I found a purpose in my life. And my purpose was to do this thing right here. So that's why in the last week or so, it's been very rough. I felt like this moment is pretty much what my whole life was leading up to. This first lecture that I can be giving, hopefully for as long as I can give it, and to start a career. So I have a purpose and a literal thing that I can do in helping other people with their existential crises. So that became my purpose after that, which is, okay, great. So I now had a purpose, but my answers to all these big questions, like who is God? What is existence? how is it meaningful? All these other things that I do have answers now are still being developed in real time. And now we can finally get to talking about spirituality as well as the state of the world today and how it's relevant to you guys. So we have a world today that is changing very, very, very quickly. It is unprecedented in human history. 500-600 years ago, someone knew that their great, great, great grandchildren were going to live pretty much the same, using horses and making food the same way and all that stuff. Back then, politics is what drove humanity forward. Whoever had power, the kings and the stories that were happening were driven by this force of who had power. And it ultimately left a bit of a stability insofar as how quickly things changed. Technology, which was based on science, is something that is now the one driving, motivating factor behind human growth or progress. And that changes things entirely. The reason science and technology became the one thing that is the underlying motivational force is because humanity had its own existential crisis and meaning crisis when it comes to religion in dark ages. Too much suppression of ideas, right? And so eventually people wanted to go towards what is real, what they felt was real, what exists, what works. So we developed science. And with science, we were able to create technology, and we saw that technology works. And that is what we call utility. Okay. So we started driving our culture towards something of purpose to harness utility, to always be able to do more, right? Build machines that extends the power of our muscles, build machines that extends the power of our minds. And now, because of the exponential nature of how technology works, when you have some technology, you have some technology to get more technology with, and this grows and grows. So the exponential rate increases. And we are now at a point in time where AI can take over all intellectual pursuits, artificial intelligence, and that intelligence can make itself better, creates a positive feedback loop, and make itself more useful in however way we program it to be, or it decides to program itself. And it leaves everyone else in a limbo, an existential crisis, which is, well, what am I going to do? Like, my job is gone. VO3 is this new thing which is relevant to us actors, is you just prompt a movie into existence. So even creativity is something that we're not even sure we're going to be able to use as a way to make money. So that brings up all these kinds of questions as to, are we going to have universal basic income and all these different things? And without getting into the politics of it, it's just to show you that humanity is facing an existential crisis that is on a global scale, because this isn't just in the West. I mean, this is going to impact every nation, no matter how rich or poor they are. And then the question is, well, what do we do? And who are we? And so this is the question that our generation on the planet today is tasked with, is to go into the spiritual realm. So I'll show you a little window of how this works. In the Industrial Revolution, machines started to take over a lot of the work. So people went from cottage industry, where they learned how to build, for example, a cabinet, or a carpenter would build furniture, but you wouldn't just know how to build it and do the mathematics to make sure everything is right, but you would also be the artist. You would paint it, you would make it a certain way. Then you moved into the factory, and in the factory you became a machine. just do the same thing over and over again. Someone else on the assembly line does the same thing over and over again. And then after we started automating the industrial warehouses and all that stuff, we moved into the service industry. That's why people started working in restaurants and cafes and more arts as well and that sort of thing. And even that is being automated. And you see, it keeps pushing things into a new sphere. This new sphere is taking creativity away from us even. We're still free to be creative. I mean, when the camera was invented, took photos, painters didn't stop painting. It took away your ability to make a job out of it, pretty much, but you did it for pleasure at the very least. More painters, I think, came about in that way. The question now is that we're not even in a creative sphere anymore. This is taking over a lot of creativity, and it, at the same time, could give us access to be even more creative. But what does it mean to be creative when you just tell the machine what to do, right? And so that's just one aspect of existential crisis that happens on a global scale. So now I've given you the story of one person, myself, who has had identity crisis and existential crisis. I hope I've laid out a clear enough picture of how the two go hand in hand, because once you have an existence, you require purpose. And purpose is how we derive meaning. So if you don't know what your purpose is, you don't have meaning. But if you don't know who you are, you don't know what your purpose is. And if you don't know, and if you know all those things, but you don't know why you're around to do it, still very difficult to live your life. So it's like a cake, right? You have absolute purpose underpinning everything, which we still haven't answered today. And this is why we are in the most spiritual times in human history ever. Everybody would say, no, it's the opposite. I don't like religion. And it's true. A lot of people are away from religion. We don't like, no. I'm not religious, but I'm spiritual. So we're going to talk about the relationship between spirituality and religion as well. But they say that. And that's because humanity is looking for that answer, which is like the absolute purpose of everything else. Why are we around? Why are we around to have an experience? It's like, oh, it's beautiful. We share, we grow, we learn, we suffer, we love. But why? And this is the deep question that we barely ever think about, because it's a hard one to think about. It's like rocking your entire reality, and it just destabilizes you, and you're very confused, and it's scary. So people don't want to think about that and doubt. That's why they teach you in religion. Oh, you can't doubt. It's a sin. Don't doubt God, right? It's very difficult as a human being to do that. But this is where we're at now. We have painted ourselves, because like I said, we developed technology and everything's about utility. And utility, if the purpose is to have utility, more power in another way, more resources, but why? Very quickly you ask yourself, why? Today we work 20 hours a week and we can be on our phones and play around for 80 hours a week. So we have too much time on our hands and we fall into hedonism, right? And very quickly we realize, well, I'm not happy being happy and doing everything that I want. So that's another dead end. So our riches, our technology, everything that we've worked for, we thought was going to bring us meaning and purpose, has brought us face to face with the exact opposite by symmetry of identity. Like, we have way too much time on our hands and way too much resources and no meaning whatsoever to any of it. So this is why now people are coming to Colombia, here in Minca, or Bali in Indonesia, or anywhere, to try to understand who they are, to, in essence, create their own religion, which is what my whole life has been. It is a search to create my own religion because I had none that I could integrate myself into. People say religion is bad, but let's talk about religion for a second after I drink a little bit. I realize I'm rambling a lot, but this is my first lecture ever, so thanks for listening. And hopefully I'll get better at making these a bit more interesting. Okay. Gracias. Okay, no more rambling. And you can see that I have a lot to say, and on every topic that I've touched, there's so much to talk about, but I'm trying to put it all into one thing. All right. What is religion? Religion is an organized structure that allows us to have community. It allows us to have tradition or ritual, which is very important. It is what gives us meaning because it tells us what is meaningful. It is what gives us morality, like here's what you do, what is good for you, what is bad for you, what is good for other people. So religion isn't inherently bad. Religion is meant to help you connect with who you are and with the nature of reality, which we call God. The reason that we don't like religion anymore is because a lot of it has become so solidified and has actually done the opposite. It keeps you from knowing who God is because those people running the religion want control. We all know this now. It's no secret. So a lot of people have abandoned religion altogether. But you cannot abandon the need that religion was fulfilling. That you can't abandon. You need that. Meaning, purpose, morality, connection with yourself and God and others. You can't get rid of that. That's called religiosity in my book. So there's religion and religiosity. However, because we are out there working and busy and working through our everyday stories, dramas that happen and so on, we can't sit around to philosophize all day long about, you know, whether we believe what we're practicing like spiritual practice in the moment or not, or whether it's good or not. We just try to go on feeling and intuition, which is probably a good thing. Whereas for me, it was the opposite. I did sit around and think about all these things a lot. Like that was all I was doing all day long. So what I realized is that now everybody is starting to do that more and more. They're creating their own religions. Is that a good thing? Is that a bad thing? It's the question isn't one of good or bad. And I don't judge whether one religion is good or bad precisely because everyone is trying to do the same thing, which is to provide these things that we need. How are we going to get there together in this chaotic world is the question. And this is one of the answers here. People gravitate towards community. They gravitate towards other people who are in the same search and who can have support in that search. And this isn't new. Religions spring up, they go up and down all the time. There's new religions coming and going, coming and going. And they often merge together. It's what we call a syncretic religion. Syncretism. Is what's happening a syncretic religion? I mean, are we starting, is the global culture, now that we have internet and global, contact with each other, creating a new story or myth? I would say probably. What that story isn't dictated by one person, however, like in the old days. This is happening on a scale that it is a story that is being written by all of us, by the collective consciousness at the same time. And it's almost as if though the human species is being saturated with enough awareness that this is what is happening. So that's starting to go up a level in metaphysical terms, right? We are thinking about what is happening, just this conversation right now, which is one of the reasons I wanted us to come together and I wanted to start this talk. However, we're talking about who we are as individuals in relation to who we are as a human species, in relation to who created us, God. And my spiritual journey started with when my mentor told me, James, it would be better if you stopped asking, who am I? But rather, what am I? Completely switched everything. And the investigation of what you are is not one that you go out there with your mind and ask questions and research. It doesn't work that way. What you are is an internal thing. It is a spiritual quest of discovery of what you are. Now, we have words to describe things, right? But what's interesting about discovering what you are from an internal perspective is that it really isn't relevant to whether other people agree with you or disagree with you or use a different term for it or not. It is an experience. It is knowledge on the most profound levels. And that is the important thing that it needs to happen, or that is happening in the world today. Because we are in a polarized stage here. All this existential crisis that's happening because we have lost meaning, because either we don't know what jobs we're going to do. We identify who we are by what we do. You ever ask someone like, hey, who are you? Well, I'm a doctor, and we immediately attach our identities to what we do, because that's how we derive meaning. Now we don't know what to do, right? So the answer to who am I is a better understood when you ask what you are and you go internally. Now the question is, how do you go internal, and who's going to help you? Because we are human beings that do need each other, and we have different levels of authority and experiences. So who can help us understand what am I, right? Especially if you're asking yourself, well, shit, now I know that the world is super political. There's nothing that I can trust anymore. No religion, no politician, no ideology, no nothing. How do I do that? Well, you have to follow your intuition. You have to find those people. But there's no reason why we can't also collectively come together and understand that that's what we're doing, and have the intention to come together and to try to understand what it is that I am. I personally believe that what I am is a part of everything, and so far as that is God, that we're sharing. God is almost experiencing itself through everything that it's created, whether it's people and everything. But that's just a worldview. It's not one that I want to impose on any one person. And that's the point. I think we're now at a level where we don't want to accept an answer, but we also don't want to be told an answer. Is we want to feel, we want to truly embody the answer, experience the answer. And we need a space to do that. We need people, a community with whom we feel safe to do that. Sure, we have ideas, we talk, we do things, and so we can get into arguments and things like that, but we're also trying to get away from that. This is what's happening in the world today. No more meaning. So some people are rushing right back into Islam or into Christianity in a very fundamental way, or into any other religion, or into yoga or whatever it is, or veganism. These things are all religions, whether they're political or cultural or traditional. We have been polarized into, a lot of us go straight into wanting to believe whatever it is we can accept into our lives. Like, I like that idea, that works for me. I can go on and live my life safely and happily. And there's the other half who says, I don't believe or trust in any of it. I don't feel it, but I'm also lost. I don't know, and I'm just trying anything. It's like what they call cafeteria Catholics, is you just pick and choose what you like about, a little bit of Buddhism, a little bit of this, a little bit of yoga, a little bit of ayahuasca or whatever, and you would just sort of work it out. And I want to help people through the process of existential crisis from both sides. Those who believe that they need to accept an ideology and be very, very strict with it, I want to help them by letting them understand that there's no threats there to them if other people have different ideas. Because if everybody believes my story is the right story, everybody's going to fight to say, well, this is the story we have to believe in. This is human history, right? And now we're at a scale where if we continue that fight, we're going to kill ourselves existentially. There won't be humanity around to fight at all if we go down that road. But if we go down the other road of everybody is free for all and it's all hedonism and all this stuff too, and nihilism, I've been down that road personally. That was the road I went through, the chaos. It also leads to killing yourself in one way or another. Overdose, or just straight up try to kill yourself. So today I've given you a little bit of an idea of what's happening, in not the most sophisticated way, but having that conversation started is what I wanted to do in my own way. And there are answers to these things as to how do we go about organizing ourselves as individual human beings and as a communities to come together and grow spiritually and have these answers for ourselves. In part, that's called logotherapy, is what I want to do. Can help people with these questions, because sometimes you only go as deep as your personal experience. You say, well, okay, well, this is what I believe in, but I'm not so sure. And you go and see the person who has an authority on that belief system, and then you're happy with the answer and you keep moving your life. Some people that doesn't work. And if that rabbit hole goes on forever, that's where I have the experience to help people through that. So that's what I want to do. That's my goal, is to try to help orient people towards meaning, not tell them what it is that they should believe, but help them understand how they can arrive at understanding what they are, so that they can finally understand who they are, so that they can have purpose in their lives, so that they can have meaning, so that they can fulfill the absolute purpose of everything else. These things are all connected, right? And one last thing I'm going to say, we should end on purpose and meaning, is that purpose is tied to causality. Here's a little bit of metaphysics at play here. Causality is one thing causes the other. It's a physical example. It's existence at play for you. One thing causes the other. If I'm a doctor, I cause, with my work, a person to survive, and that causes them being able to live with their family happy and provide for their children and so on. So that's meaningful to you because of your personal experience, who you are. You maybe were sick when you were a kid and someone took care of you and that touched you in such a big way. You were in the hospital for 3 years or something like that. And you started wanting to understand your own condition. So you started to get into medicine and so on. And so that shaped you to give you a purpose. And that purpose was to save other people's lives. I was saved. I want to save other people's lives. And so that gives you an identity and it gives you a purpose, and that purpose brings you meaning. And if that's taken away from you now, right, you're immediately going to ask, well, who am I if I'm not the doctor? How do I get meaning from my life if that's not my identity anymore? And so once that question enters your mind, and it does for a lot of people nowadays because of technology, and even if their job is secure, they can sense that there's an end to an era. We're entering this new dimension of human interaction, of how we're going to live, that they can sense that all meaning is going to be something they have to face, even though they can continue their job. Because like I said, if you lose a job or you lose a partner or a friend that defined who you are, that was what you were relying on for an identity. If that gets shaken, and everything is going to get shaken because of all the changes that are happening on one level or another, not only are you going to have an existential crisis as a personal individual human being with your personal purpose, you're going to have an existential crisis when it comes to the absolute purpose for everything. And that's what's very dangerous, because when an entire civilization has mass psychosis or mass existential crisis, like, who are we as a human species, and like, what do we believe in and what do we do? How do we move forward? I mean, we're looking at the extinction of our human species. It's not to be too dramatic, but it's happened before and it can continue happening. And so at the end of the day, what we're after is purpose. And the problem is that no one can dictate what absolute purpose is. So how do you get around that problem? We need an absolute purpose to justify our species living on this planet right now. We need a story, in other words. But who gets to tell that story? And how is it? And then an even deeper question is, whatever story emerges from a collective humanity coming together, how are we going to know that's true? That's another big, huge question. Is it true? Or is it just a story? I mean, does it matter that if we know that the story isn't true, but it helps us live our lives as a species on this planet? For some people, it won't be. They'll use that against, for power, create doubt again. So we are on a level of philosophical and spiritual warfare where we don't know what the enemy is or what it even means to have an enemy. Like, what do we fight against? We don't. What problems do we have? And then when we see that the problems are very simple, but the most difficult, which is answering these big questions, the only answer is you have to go inside and experience truth for yourself. It's not one story that is going to be told by everybody or by one person, although many will start to tell their stories and more people will either follow one or the other, and it's going to create a lot of clashes and wars, and this is what's happening now. So it is important that there are people in the world and communities in the world that are not judging or not even focusing on any of the problems of the end of the world or the apocalypse or the whatever change that is happening. They're focusing on the internal world with each other, living for heaven, not living in fear of the hell that we're experiencing as a human species. That's how you bring about heaven. It's within each and every one of us as individuals to do it. And I think that that's why people gravitate to places like Minca, where there's a strong force. This is the heart of the world, right? If you go inside your heart and not in your head, that's my main message here, is you can see that I have a lot of ideas and I could keep going in detail about everything I've been talking about, but that's not the road to go down. Because right now, everything I've given you, like speech, is just constant negative. What are you going to do? What's happening? It's crisis. It's putting you in survival mode. That's the whole thing that I've just given you, right? And my message to the world is the answer isn't, although I have answers, but they're my answers for me, that developed within me for me. And that the same can happen for everybody else. And that is what everybody's doing anyway with their spiritual quests. So let's encourage ourselves and each other to keep going down that road, to have this discussion if we need to on levels that are a bit more mental. If you get caught in the mental, then that's what I can be helpful for. And I'm still caught in it. I'm trying to go into my heart. You people have been very helpful in that, in helping me live and go into my heart. But because we are beings of the mind as well, we sometimes we want to articulate these experiences and things like that. But I want us to be very careful when it comes to that, because you can create doubts that aren't even necessary. And so thank you for listening. I'm not so satisfied with how much I've been rambling, and it wasn't as organized as I wanted it to be, but I'm glad that I was able to do this for the first time, and to offer what I have, like knowledge and experience. And I'm looking forward to doing these more and more. So thanks for coming. It's really cool to do this, and hopefully I can start doing these more in the future. But if there's any questions, or this is for the people online, I guess, but any comments or questions, then please just drop them in the comments below. And again, a career is starting to emerge in my life, or a sense of purpose, which is to help people through these kinds of crises. So if anybody who wants that kind of help, let me know. I want to start taking on, like, not clients or patients, but I want to start being open to help people in the only way that I know how. And I just appreciate that you guys were here, gave me your time, your energy, and your presence today. Gratitude is what I'm focusing on as well, for helping me do that, as unsophisticated as it feels this time around. But I want to get better, and that's the point. And I appreciate so much that you guys have been the people that have given me full confidence and comfort to be able to do this, and Erica as well, to have given me a space to do it as well, and to be here in Minca in the world. And she's I put her to sleep, so so that's it. And I guess there's like a yoga thing happening right now. Nikkila's coming, so if you guys want to stick around for that, you can do that. All right, thank you. All right.